Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News website. Today we have Ridgeline Minerals Chad Peters. He's the CEO. Recently, the company had some good and not so good news out. I think that not so good news is creating a good opportunity because it looks like the stock chart is double bottomed here, and they'll have a bunch of catalysts coming up. So let's start first with the not so good news, Tara.
Sure, might as well get that out of the way. So yeah, we just actually came out on Thursday with our Carlin East results, which was a pretty highly touted. I'll be first to admit, people had high expectations, including us, for that program. It was deep drilling right on the kind of core of the North Carlin trend, for those that aren't familiar with the project, and directly on trend of a new discovery that Nevada Gold Mines announced in 2020. They actually hit 42 meters of 33 grams per ton in their most recent press release. So, I mean, we're talking like world-class intercepts on a fault zone that cuts right across our project, less than 4 kilometers off the edge of our property. So our goal was to go in, hit the same host rocks, prove we could try to intersect that mineralized fault zone, and get some folks excited. And the actual main issue that we ran into, it wasn't the geology, it was getting the holes to target. We really struggled. It's tough to find drilling contracts and contractors in Nevada right now. I'm sure it kind of sounds a bit like a broken record, but it is what it is. It's what's happening right now. Is
everywhere.
Everybody raised money in 2020, every junior in the market, and and rigs are just really hard to come by, and even more so, finding experienced drillers to run those rigs was our issue. So wouldn't say we were operating with the A team, and we just weren't able to get holes. We're talking holes of 1,000+ meters in some of the worst drilling conditions I've seen. So we were only able to get 1 of 3 planned holes down, and we actually walked away from the program after losing the second hole and said, this isn't in the best interest of the company or the shareholders. We're burning through cash, and we don't have confidence that the drilling company is going to get the holes down to target depth. So we took a step back. That was our press release, essentially saying, look, we didn't hit what we intended. Doesn't mean the target is a busted target. It just means we need to rethink our approach and be a little bit more, I guess you could say, strategic about how we advance that project. But
now, getting back to the nearby new discovery, what depths did they have to go down to tag that?
Yeah, no, good question. So we know that they're hitting between 800 and 900 meters vertical depth. So we are talking, it's down there for Nevada, right? I think the deepest ongoing discovery in Nevada right now is 4 Mile. They're easily drilling anywhere from, I think the top of the ore zone at the deepest points is around 1,500 meters, right? So, that's still well within, call it target range for mining in Nevada right now, but it's at the deeper end of it. So they're hitting 8. Oh, go ahead.
So how deep did you guys actually get?
Well, we got to 1,200 meters. And part of the issue is we were drilling 3 holes across a roughly 1.5 kilometer north-south strike, peppered along this fault zone. This was the first hole on the farthest north part of the program. It's the only hole we were actually able to get down. And it turned out that we drilled through a major fault zone and actually ended up duplicating that upper plate host unit. So we were drilling through and hit this fault, and suddenly we're like, wait a second, we've seen these rocks before. And that's never a good feeling when you're above your ore zone, right? So we
getting back to the discovery.
Yeah.
Was there some stratigraphic horizons relating to this fault?
So that fault cuts down. It's called the Four Corners Fault. It's actually the mirror image of the Post Fault, which hosts over 100 million ounces just across the valley. That's the core of the North Carlin trend, is along the Post Fault. Now all of the new major discoveries being made on the North Carlin trend are actually happening along the Four Corners Fault, which is the Carlin mine, Leeville mine, the North Leeville discovery that I mentioned, that great intercept. These are all stretched along that fault zone. So where that fault intersects the Popovich and Roberts Mountain and Bootstrap limestones of the lower plate is where you're getting these great intercepts.
So did you guys hit any lower plate rock?
No, we didn't. That's the problem with our only hole. We drilled this duplicated section. We got to 1,200 meters, and we hit some marker beds at the base of that hole, a greenstone unit that's fairly well known throughout the trend. That usually indicates that you're very close. You could be 100, 150 meters from the top of the lower plate. Unfortunately for us, our drill costs were spiraling into up to $1,200 per foot cost by the time we got, yeah. So that's what I mean. When you get to those kind of ranges, I think our average cost per foot was about $350 across the 4 months per foot for the 4-month program.
That's
So
like drilling in remote locations.
yeah, well, it's crazy. I could have flew a helicopter into the Golden Triangle and drilled for about the same price.
Yeah.
And I thought it was totally outrageous until I talked to some Barrick folks, and they said they're drilling for roughly the same cost in the same area. Now the difference is they're Barrick, and we're a 20 million market cap company. I can't, our company can't absorb those costs when we can't guarantee the holes are getting down the target. And so that, yeah.
Having said that, you still have that really important fault, which is cracks in the rocks that bring the fluids up, and you didn't test the horizon.
Exactly. The geologic model is still it's still there. We know it's deep, which we already knew, and we have 2 holes to the south of this first hole we drilled that are pre-collared to between 400 and 500 meters, and they're ready to go back in. The difference is I want to renegotiate a better drilling contract, and it's worth mentioning. I have the strategic drilling contract set up with our partner, right? But that's for reverse circulation RC drilling. That's, we used that contract to drill 500-meter pre-collars on all 3 of those holes at a cost of only about $45 a foot. So incredibly affordable. But when we brought in the third-party contractor to do the core tails, that's where the wheels came off. So
in no way did you kill the project. You just have to go about it in a different way. So what's the plan? Are you going to wait for that, or what are you thinking you're going to do there?
Well, I love the fact that Barrick or NGM is continuing to drill. They're just drilling closer and closer to our project. So that just continues to add value there. So that's a great little catalyst that we, aside from what we can do on the project. I just want to pretty much go out. We have ongoing drilling at Swift, great drill program at Selena coming up. So I want to drill those programs or see those results of those programs, hopefully do a nice raise enough that we can comfortably go in and drill both Carlin East and Bell Creek. And we want to keep 100% ownership of these projects. Swift was a strategic partnership with NGM. We knew that we couldn't advance multiple deep projects in parallel and keep our share structure in a meaningful, keep it in a good spot. So, but we're not in the business. We're not a prospect generator. I'm not in the business of optioning all the upside away from every single project, right? So we want to keep 100% of these projects and drill them ourselves. We just need to drill them, raise some money.
I certainly don't blame you on that Carlin East project. I mean, you're shooting for jewelry boxes there, and that's not easy to hit them all the time, but it's certainly worth going back in there and trying to tag that right horizon in relation to the fault.
No, you actually nailed it there. That's a really good point that I didn't bring up. So Leeville is a 15 million ounce underground mine, right? It was discovered in the mid 90s. It's been in production for 20 years already. They had over 30 holes in the North Leeville discovery area and did not advance it, turn it into a discovery until 20 plus years later. So that shows just how, like you said, these are shooting for needle in a haystack. When you hit them, they're game-changing discoveries, but they're not easy. So we recognize that. So that's why we took that step back. The target's not dead, but we do need to rethink our approach. And that's what 2022 will be, is raising the capital required to do it right. And we want to go out and test it properly next year.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're keeping on to it, because you haven't killed the target in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we'd like to think so. And we'll see if we can prove it next year.
Okay, so let's get on to the good news.
Yeah.
Now you guys, what really impressed me, Chad, is, I've seen a lot of majors do deals on junior projects. And, what is often the case is they take a long time to roll their sleeves up and start drilling. In a very short period of time, you've gone from doing a deal with them and now they're drilling. That is a very good indicator to me.
Well, thanks. No, we were really excited about it too. And I think what was really cool about the deal with NGM is it wasn't from a negotiating perspective, it was a very...
Before you go on, folks, NGM is a joint venture between Barrick Gold and Newmont in Nevada. And so they're working in tandem, two of the biggest, I think they are the biggest mining companies in the world. And both of them are very active in Nevada. So you're not talking about just some small junior here.
Yeah, we definitely, that's what we were targeting when this deal came together, right? Is us moving the project into the hands of another junior explorer. It adds zero value for our shareholders, right? Like it was either Barrick, it was either an NGM, or it was us keeping the project and moving it forward. And this was probably the most collaborative negotiation I've ever had, right? Like everybody was on the same page, like there was it just was a really pleasant experience actually dealing with these guys. I couldn't believe it. Like we felt that, our point was, look, we consolidated a district. We've proven a new geologic concept that's significant by discovering that wind band formation host rock still existed on our project. And, we wanted to see this thing get moved forward, but we didn't want to be put in a position where we'd get diluted out of the story, right? And so I think getting the carried interest, I mean, the fact that we were able to get 20 million US in the ground to earn 60, 10 million US in the ground to earn an additional 10, that's 30 million US to earn 70%. That's a huge spend, even for a group like
that
Barrick.
would leave you guys with a 30% interest. And
Correct.
Is that carried through to production?
So then they can earn an additional 5% they have after finishing the second option agreement of 10 million for 10%, they have 90 days to elect to then choose to take it to production. In that time frame, and during that, they can earn an additional 5% by providing our loan at their cost of capital to move it forward. So, if it's $500 million to put this thing into production, our 25% interest is fully carried by Nevada Gold Mines at their cost of capital. So, as good a rate as you're going to find in the business. And then they can recoup those costs at an 80-20 basis once production begins. So it's a fully cash flowing, we get free cash flow on day one, albeit at a discounted rate until we get that loan paid back. And then after that, it's a 25% carry. So.
And they would be looking at a high margin operation if they go through that. So you'd probably look at a very rapid payback on the CapEx.
I would think so. And, we're going after they're going after the next gold rush or 4 Mile. That's the kind of target that we believe is there, and them as well. So it shows a very similar surface footprint. It's a 10-kilometer long fault zone. The main fault zone that rips through the project is over 10 kilometers long, and it's showing Carlin type alteration along the whole length. So great potential. They got the single hole that they're drilling this year, which again, I agree with you 100%. The fact that they're drilling a hole about 65, 70 days after we sign the agreement is incredible.
Sometimes it can take 6 months to a year before they do a whole bunch of prep work. But I guess, if you're sitting on a major fault, not to get too geology for my audience there, these faults are like cracks in the earth. And what they allow is the fluids that have the gold bearing fluids to make their way close to surface. One of the things that you look for is that alteration. It means that, there's a chemical reaction there that causes the rocks to be altered. And that happens when you're close to a deposit. And so they're in the right kind of rock package, and they've got the alteration, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. And that's probably why the Newmont and Barrick joint venture are so eager to drill. They're in the land of elephants, and it looks like they've got the signs there might be an elephant there.
Well, exactly. And those things like, for example, 4 Mile took 12 drill holes to make that initial discovery. And it was actually hole 12 that hit. The first 11, absolute dusters, hole 12 hit. Now, those holes, they're drilling a 900-meter hole at Swift right now. That's a $400,000 drill hole. I mean, do the math. It could take, $4 or $5 million of concerted drilling effort just to make that first drill hole hit, right? So that's, we have a 4 million guarantee US in the first 2 years. I think they're going to spend it in the first probably year. They're pretty excited based on what we're seeing so far. But, they rock chipped up to 10 grams per ton gold at surface, and 9.8 to be exact, I guess. But
so let's talk a little bit about comparing that to the other discovery. Did they have a big alteration zone and being able to chip sample at, the right kind of rock to hit?
Yeah, so the 4 Mile discovery was actually the initial alteration. My understanding is they started picking it up in road cuts, which is exactly how ours started. So we just had roads winding through the project. They started sampling along those road cuts, and they were hitting Carlin type alteration and geochemistry. And they went in and they kind of defined the target based on the structures they were seeing at surface. Now it's funny because we trenched multiple trenches along these same type of road cut as them, hitting significant alteration. And we chipped up to 3.5 grams gold. They followed up with 9.8. So for them, that was, they just were looking at it and saying like, man, this is showing a lot of the early signs that we saw in some of our other discoveries on the Cortez district at surface. So they're excited. I think that's evidenced by the fact they're drilling so darn quick. And now we can kind of sit back and it's great. I get daily updates from their drill team, right? They say, hey, here's where we're at today, core photos. I mean, it couldn't be a better setup for us. I'm really excited.
Well, I hope they get off to a good start. That will make them roll up their sleeves and spend that money, not on searching around, but on, targeting a zone. So that's a hell of a good story.
No, I'm excited. And, I kind of look at this, like what Zach Flood and the Kennerland guys were able to do up there with Sumitomo, right? They made an early discovery. And I mean, look what the valuation of their company quickly went to right off the backs of that. And just our Swift project, I think, provides that upside. And we also have that carried interest, which I think is a huge win long-term for the project. So
well, I'm kind of glad you brought that name up because I see a lot of similarities between you two guys. Your teams, you've got really good teams, you do real good geology, and you're able to attract big companies to do joint ventures on your ground. And Kenorland, I did an interview with Zach and really impressed with especially their Frotet property in Quebec. And you and I talked long before that, and I've always been impressed with the work you guys do. You come with a very good pedigree because you worked with my friend Ewan Downey for a long time, and you cut your teeth with a good team there, and you're building a good team.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? Is, when I think when you're trying to attract these big kind of companies, exactly like Zach and them have done, and what we're trying to do down here in Nevada, is you have to have the science to back it up, right? Because these big companies, they are incredibly science-driven, data-driven companies. You may not see it, and when Mark Bristow is given a presentation, that he's going to, kind of gloss over that. But they're some of the strongest technical teams I've come across, kind of thing. So you have to be able to go toe-to-toe with them, and if you don't, they're going to steamroll you. So I think that's why we were able to get a great deal. And I mean, they're drilling a target that we had the pad permitted and ready to go, right? So the target we were going to drill this year, we ended up backing off of it because we got approached by them to do a deal. And you don't drill holes in the middle of negotiations, right? So for good or bad. And so, they said, we got down to it and did a meeting, and they said, well, where would you drill? And we kind of put a finger on the map, and they said, that's exactly where we're thinking too. And we already had a permit. So it's been good.
Well, that's probably why your negotiation went well. I think in the combination that you've worked with those guys before, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stand on the soapbox a little bit, but here, but the only joint ventures that have been done with Nevada Gold Mines or Barrick over the last decade in Nevada, I've been the team lead on both, and I've been lucky to have incredible teams working under me, right? I'm just usually the guy kind of telling the story, but it's guys like Mike Harp and Gabe Aliaga on my team right now. They're the ones that figured this all out and put the story together, and no, it's a good relationship with those guys. I mean, we all know each other, and as soon as we hit the wind band, the NGM guys kind of gave us a call and said, hey, we really want to look at this core. So it worked out well.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so that's not the only thing you got on the immediate horizon.
Yeah, we got more.
On the near-term horizon. We talked at length about your Salina project.
Yes.
And I remember when we talked about that, you'll refresh my memory, but I saw some very exciting structural features that go from where you are all the way to the west, and some cross-cutting features and some high mineralization at the intersection of faults structures. And immediately in my mind, it sounded like it was leading you to the west, where there seems to be a big porphyry.
Correct. Yeah.
And so you've kind of probably got the continuum of that. So let's get back to refreshing on Salina and where you're going with that.
Yeah, and Salina is one of our 100% owned assets, and it's just keeps on getting more exciting for us, which is part of the reason we did the Swift deal again, was that we could focus energy and capital back onto that project. It is started as a gold target, just rock chips at surface, very grassroots. Quickly morphed into a silver gold discovery. I think we had our highlight drill intercepts in 2021 was 44 meters of about 123 grams silver. 0.1 grams gold, 1.5% lead, and 0.7% zinc, with a high grade including in that was over, just to give it perspective, was about 14 meters of about 12% zinc equivalent. So high silver and lead and zinc kicking up in there as well. So what we realized is what we discovered on the hillside where you were mentioning those structures, the big feeder zones, that was mostly gold and silver. As we started drilling to the west down into the valley, we hit that 44-meter intercept of starting to see lead and zinc. And we actually realized that the porphyry to the west, which is about 3 kilometers away, is what is pushing all those fluids out into the system. And we actually have what would be a carbonate replacement target in that untested 3-kilometer gap. So for your folks who aren't aware, a carbonate replacement deposit, or CRD, is high grade silver, lead, and zinc, plus or minus gold. And some good examples, analogs in the business include Arizona Mining's Taylor deposit, which was sold for a couple $2 billion back in 2018, right? So,
Speaking of that,
yeah.
a lot of my viewers will know about that because really early in the days of that project, I interviewed John Kaiser quite a few times. And he basically laid out the story of what they were working on, what they needed to pass to move in the right direction. And ultimately we started covering it at really cheap prices, and they ended up being a
Big
massive takeover and a huge winner for my audience. And so I sure hope this, when we talk about this CRD, that people don't lose sight of the kind of end game that can happen.
Yeah, just Salina on its own. It's funny. That was probably our 3rd ranked project a year and a half ago, and it's probably up there in the flagship category now if we can prove this concept with our spring drill program. I mean, just to put it in perspective, now obviously the Taylor deposit, that's a world-class CRD, and we got to make a significant discovery to even get part of the way there. But some of the early indicators that I like about what we drilled in 2021, we drilled 5 meters of 25% zinc equivalent. Now, I'm just giving that for comparative purposes, right? We're not a zinc project yet. That was 5 meters of 421 silver, 0.6 gold, 4.5% lead, and 3.5% zinc. So that's double the grade of the average head grade of the Taylor deposit. We hit 13 meters of 11% zinc equivalent, and we hit 5 more meters of 9% zinc equivalent. So we're hitting onto the edge of what you could say is comparable grades already. Know what we need to drill over this next 3-kilometer stretch of never before tested ground between us and the porphyry is trying to find the feeder zones to that mineralization, which then could have significant grade and tonnage. So that's what we'll be targeting in the spring. If we're right, it's an absolute game changer for the company. And then on top of that, we have all these other catalysts, right? Bell Creek, Carlin East, Swift. So I like how we're setting things up right now. I feel like there's multiple kicks at the can, and you never want to be reliant on any one project to float your company, right?
Let's talk a little bit more about these CRD type targets. Is there a zonation of grade, and also are they long-lived systems? Are you getting indications that this is a long-lived system that pumps those fluids up there into the right package of rock?
Yes, they are. They are long-lived, massive systems. So these porphyries, like the porphyry that is just off the edge of our project, that was owned by Freeport-McMoRan. It's been known about since the 1970s. It's just a little too deep to be an open pit, and it's not high enough grade to be an underground copper mine. But there is significant tonnage there, and that's been pushing fluids. That was pushing fluids out for millions of years while that system, pulsed and cooled. And so what we see is multiple overprinting vein textures at the project, at surface and in the ore zones themselves. Both overprinting calcite breccias, quartz breccias, and then within that is the ore itself. And when you're 4 kilometers away from the porphyry, you see mostly silver and gold. You get a kilometer closer to the porphyry, suddenly you're getting silver, gold, lead, and zinc, but the gold is actually dropping off. So as you get closer to the heat source, which is a porphyry, you're going to see a higher amount of silver, lead, and zinc, and plus or minus gold. And that's just part of the chemistry and the heat of the system. It changes which metals drop out at what time. So we can actually say that, what we hit on the hillside and originally trenched, that's kind of the edges of the bigger CRD system. And as we move closer to the porphyry, that system's heating up. Your metal chemistry is changing. And as a result, you get a change in the type of system you drill, which is more of the silver.
You're getting the broken up rock that enables those fluids to get in there.
Exactly. And those same through going faults that you mentioned that you noticed the first time we talked, those slam right into the porphyry, right? So we're doing the geochemistry, we're doing the geophysics to try to track those at depth. But yeah, I mean, all the indicators are there that we have something, a really exciting conceptual target. It's already pretty well evidenced with copper gold on one side of the project at the porphyry and silver, lead, and zinc and gold on the other side. So you have a target that's bookended by mineralization. It's just a
And
matter of
that fault goes from those hills through the flat part and
Yep.
right to that
Yep.
porphyry.
And it cuts through the porphyry. And then if you actually look at it from a regional scale, Allan, it actually cuts all the way up to the Bald Mountain mine, which is an intrusion related gold system of over 5 million ounces. So it's what you're seeing is these deep cracks that you mentioned before. You know, anywhere in Nevada, if you're looking for a large deposit, you need to find those deep regional cracks. That's where the big deposits are flowing up. And then where you get those cross-cutting faults is where those bleed out into deposits, right? So we have one of those deep cracks. You have a porphyry and an intrusion-related gold system over 20 kilometers on that fault. And then now what we're drilling is the cross faults bleeding off of those major guys. And that's kind of the big target for the CRD.
Wow, that sounds exciting. I like being able to spot those things. Sometimes I wonder why more companies don't show their Google Earth images and sort of, because those deep cracks, they show themselves at the surface.
They do, yeah.
And you can trace those cracks, and you don't need to talk a lot about it. You can show it on a Google Earth image that there it is.
Well, you can see, you look, an entire mountain ranges will be offset sometimes by these faults, right? So, when those are the ones you're looking for. Is just Barrett calls them fertile faults. That's some of the things we're learning from him by partnering with him here. But you need to find those big regional fertile fault zones, and then find, like you said, the damage zones within those at a project scale, where you're getting nice cross-cutting fault structures with the right host rocks. And in those cases, it's just like the Carlin trend. The Carlin trend itself.
Well, you're making me feel good to know that I can spot the same things that Barrick looks for.
Yeah, no, you're doing all the right things. So, I mean, maybe you should start staking some ground in Nevada.
The other thing I'm quite often surprised by is, those surface expressions of those deep cracks. A lot of times companies will talk about geophysics, and they don't overlay it onto their Google Earth map. And it's like it sticks out like a sore thumb when you combine those two.
Well, we've kind of taken a bit of an old, like we say exploration done differently, which is kind of but in reality, our focus is actually kind of going more old school and going back to basic geology, which is folio style geology, right? And to give a little perspective for folks, what that means is you collect all the baseline data, the surface geochemistry, the mapping, the geophysics, all of it. And then you target by layering all of that data together. And so then you start seeing the entire picture, right? If you just do a geophysical survey, but you don't do the geology to back it, you just wasted $100,000. You might as well just focus on, so that's what we try to do, is we try to build these projects from the ground up. We pick up core land positions right in the middle of some of these trends in Barrick's backyard, do that baseline work to reinterpret these things. And that's what led to the Swift deal. And I'm hoping more success at our other projects as well. So it's been a good run for the last 2 years.
I spent a fair bit of my career in diamond exploration, and I worked for a guy who ran the world exploration for Anglo, who owns De Beers. And they had a guy who all he did was look at satellite images of the rocks.
LiDAR
And now you can do that with Google Earth. And it just boggles my mind that more investors and the people leading companies don't try to show that, what's being indicated at the surface of what could be underneath the surface.
My VPX, not to give away the secret sauce, but my VPX Mike's incredible at that. And he actually just scans all over mountain ranges across Nevada and Idaho. And we look for oxidized plumes at surface.
That used to cost you millions of dollars.
It used to be, you'd have to have a proprietary database. He can do that in an afternoon, right? So we're actually, we've done a lot of deals with EMX, acquired assets. Now a big focus for our company is we're starting to kind of, I guess we're getting established enough that, we got some good deals, we got some great projects. The next step is our pipeline of projects. I don't want to be acquiring them if I can't, right? I want to be staking ground unencumbered, picking those up and doing grassroots work. So
no royalty, no partners, you get it all.
Yeah. But if we're, obviously, especially like EMX, those guys are just, they're looking at more ground than any, like I can't keep up with them, right? They got an entire team fully focused on just picking up ground. So they're constantly offering us great opportunities. And I think we'll jump at something at some point here. But yeah, part of it is if we can acquire our own projects, I mean, the cost is incredibly low. If you have any success, you said you can go sell a royalty, you can, it makes it easier to do deals.
So where to from here? You've got the drilling underway at Swift, I believe it's called.
Yep.
And what's going on with Selena? When do you plan on getting the boots on the ground and start putting the truth machine to that again?
You got it. So we're actually doing the mapping, geochemistry and geophysics over the next 3 months here at Selena. We're going to end the year with about 2.3 million Canadian in the bank. So, it's good cash position. We don't have a high burn rate. And we'll be drilling that hopefully in April. So my goal is we're trying to work out a short course with Peter McGaw right now in early Q1. So he's, get him to give us the rundown on how a good CRD system.
Mr. CRD.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's money well spent to bring a guy like him in and kind of help us unravel some of the geochemistry that we're seeing, help us target. So we'll be drilling that in April. We'll have results coming out in May, June, and July. It's drilling RC. We're using our drill contract for that. So we'll be able to drill for about $25 a foot on deep holes. So incredibly cheap. And we're going to get 6,000 meters done over about a 2.5-3 month period. And while that's going on, we'll have assays coming out of Swift probably sometime in Q1. We have the ability to press release those assays. So we'll be able to get that out to the market when appropriate. So lots of catalysts, right? We have Swift, Selena getting drilled, 100% funded by us, and we have the cash in the bank to do so. Fully funded drilling going on at Swift with news coming out in the new year as well. Have a new acquisition I'm really excited about that I hope we can bring to market shortly, which I think will be really well received. And then on top of that, we have ongoing work at Bell Creek and Carlin East, and those are very, like we talked about, we do want to see those advance, but we got to be smart and raise some serious money to go do it.
Barrick and Newmont being who they are, do they have their own assay labs, or are they able to get to the front of the queue to get assays done?
They don't have their own assay labs, but when they send their assays in, they're at the top of the list, no matter what lab they're working with, right? So they'll be getting what you could call priority service, I'm sure, because I've had times in the past when I've called and said, "Where's my assays?" and the lab would say, "Well, Barrick's getting their stuff done first, so sit back." So
it
yeah,
sounds like there's a good chance that even before you start drilling again on Selena, you should start to see some early holes from Swift.
I would hope so. We're not the operator, so I can't guarantee it. But based on the speed at which Barrick is operating at this stage, I would be surprised if we don't have assays out by the end of Q1 at the latest.
And Barrick likes to get good news out on drill success.
They do. Yeah. Mark Bristow is an explorationist at heart, from what I can tell. So if they have any good news at all, I'm certain that they will be excited to get it out to market.
Especially in Nevada, that's just more crown jewels.
Yeah. So, I think one of the, for your folks that are listening, I think one of the exciting things about us is, we have, not only do we have multiple catalysts over the next 3 to 5 months, but they're not small catalysts, right? We're talking about, success at Swift, success at Selena. Any one of those are game changers for the company, and talk about a massive multiple on our current share price. So,
and then that would give you enough opportunity to fund getting back into the Carlin East, because man, I'd like to see you get down to the right rock packages there. That's that makes big jewelry boxes there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at Bell Creek for the first time in about 10 years, Nevada Gold Mines is now talking about the Wren deposit, which sits right on the edge of our Bell Creek project. Now, the reason they weren't talking about it is Ewan just horse traded South Arturo for Lone Tree, right, with I-80 Gold. I've found out after the fact that Barrick has pretty much connected mineralization between Wren and South Arturo, and they weren't willing to talk about that until the deal with Ewan got taken care of. And I mean, Ewan I think that was an incredible deal to get the Lone Tree mill in there, so it worked for everybody. But at the first quarter after that deal closed, they suddenly announced a new discovery at Wren. So they drilled 12 meters at 26 grams per ton. They put out a resource shape that they're going to have a resource by the end of this year at Wren. Now that resource shape is located 600 meters off the edge of our project, which is 100% out. And there's multiple cross faults that cut through that deposit and cut onto our ground. So now that we know that, we have a surface access agreement that we announced in early 2021 with Nevada Gold Mines, that we have full unfettered access to our project through their mine site. We can use their existing roads to access the project, because we're literally an island within, the edge of the project sits on the Barrick tailings facility, right? So that's a 40+ million ounce gold mine, and our project actually sits on the edge of their tailings. So great target. We have access to it.
When do you foresee the chance to get in there and do more work there?
It's gonna fall into the same basket as Carlin East, right? We need to go out and raise a serious, not when I say serious money, I just mean you'd probably want to put $1 million US into Bell Creek, and you'd probably want to put $2 million, $2 million to 2.5 into Carlin East.
That's less than $5 million.
Yeah.
These days, companies are financing themselves for 10 to $20 million on success. So, you've got 2 kicks at the can at both Swift and Selena. And if you get some joy there in the market, you've got your opportunity to raise that kind of money.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we don't want to do it at those levels, but with the catalyst we have lined up, I'm pretty confident we'll hopefully see a far better share price than we see right now, which, to be fair, everybody in the junior space is getting slammed. So we're just riding it out right now, and know that we got great projects and great catalysts lined up, and we're hoping in the new year we'll be able to raise some good money and go out and drill those projects.
Awesome, Chad. Yeah. Thank you very much for your
thanks for having me
and your explanation of all this, because I think sometimes investors look at a news release and they react. They don't really read that news release very well. And, I like to dig deeper, because I think that's where you find value.
Well, no, for sure. And, it's incredibly tough, right? Because, this is, finding deposits is not an easy thing. I was lucky enough to be a part of about 10 million ounces of discovery now. Every one of them was hard. It was not easy to make, right? They don't come easy. So, trying to explain a hit or a miss, a very complex idea, and trying to break it down into a very simple concept can be difficult. And
that's why I'm here.
Yeah, there you go. You gleaned it out for everybody. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to close it off. Hang around. We'll have a chat at the end.
Sounds good.
So there you go, folks. I like this company a lot. One of the things I always try to look for are geologists that do good work. And Chad and his team do great work. They're focused in Nevada. They've got lots of kicks at the can to get what I call the Nevada premium. From a chart perspective, recently they've made a double bottom. And it's also a seasonality thing, because now we're into the season when there's tax loss selling. So sometimes not only do people trade on emotion and don't really read into the news releases, they also look at it from a tax perspective too. So they sell for those reasons, and those aren't good reasons. They are reasons, but they're not great reasons. And this often, for those that are sharp, creates an opportunity that, sometimes doesn't take very long to pay off. I used to do a show on tax loss selling picks alone. And I think someone did a calculation one time that buying in December, those tax loss picks that I made resulted in 50% to 100% gains by January. And I would definitely put this high on a shopping list for tax loss opportunities, and also the tremendous catalysts that they have ahead of them. So take a good look at Ridgeline Minerals, do your homework, speak with your financial advisors. But I think they are even though they've had some not so great news, they've also had good news. So, that's the kind of situation that I like companies when they're upfront about their exploration is not easy. But one of my mentors is Andre Gumond. And he told me a long time ago, Allan, always be good to your shareholders, do the best job you can, tell them everything straight, and they'll stick with you. And I think that's a recipe for success. And I think that's what the way Chad does things and his team does things. So stay tuned for more good news because I think they got a lot coming.